City County Planning Commission, please come to order. Ms. Martin, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Balance? Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Coppinger?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vokert? Commissioner Gay?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison? Commissioner Houston? Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. Everyone's had a chance to review the summary minutes of the January 3rd meeting. Are there any corrections to those minutes? No corrections?
So moved.
And I ask for a motion. Thank you, sir. Need a
Second.
second? Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Coppinger?
Abstain.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am.
I request that you order that the Warren County zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan with all of its elements effective January 17, 2019, be introduced as exhibits for tonight's hearings. I'd further request that you order that the staff reports, all attachments together with the commission's file for each application, be introduced as exhibits. And finally, I'd ask that Ben Peterson, Executive Director, Rachel Hurt, Planner, Monica Ramsey, Planner, be sworn as witnesses before you, and that their oath and qualifications be reflected in the record for each hearing.
So ordered. Swear to tell the truth before the commission. Thank you all. You will notice that the December financial report was in the packet. You have any questions on that? No questions. We'll move on. The preliminary subdivision and site development plan, those approvals. Any questions on any of those in the packet? No questions. Letters of credit and performance bonds. You'll notice that you have an amended agenda at your seat tonight. We now have 3 items. Any questions on those 3 items? No questions.
Excuse me, what's item number 2 being the release from Summit subdivision?
Yes, so that release, they have completed all the items in section 4 only. We still have some remaining items in other sections of the summit, but for section 4, they are complete with that section, and so they're requesting release of that bond. Yes, sir.
Questions? Ask for a motion, please. Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Coppinger? Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren? Commissioner Madison? Commissioner Houston?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. And the first item tonight for public hearing is from the old business from our last meeting, docket number 2018-57ZBG, Sandra Stewart and Buckhead Kitchen and Bar, care of Caitlin Davis, have filed an application to rezone a portion of a tract of land containing approximately 0.29 acres located at 0 Campbell Lane, the southeast corner of Campbell Lane and Thoroughbred Drive, from RM4, which is multifamily residential with a general development plan, to general business with a general development plan. And we will have the staff report from Ms. Hurt.
Thank you, Chair Runner. We had a pre-application conference on October the 30th for the property you mentioned, located at the corner of Campbell Lane and Thoroughbred Drive. You can see that the property is currently zoned RM4, which is multifamily residential, and the current use of the property is vacant. The future land use designation for the property is commercial. This future land use designation consists of a broad array of commercial development, including individual commercial businesses that may exist along a highway corridor or a business district, as well as larger planned shopping centers and office parks. Limited high-density multifamily uses are allowed to be mixed into commercial areas. These uses should be limited to upper stories or blended in or scattered among commercial uses. No more than 25% of any contiguous area designated commercial should contain a multifamily use, and the proposal complies with the future land use map and with the commercial category. I'm going to switch up the screen here to the preliminary development plan that was submitted by the applicants. And the applicants are proposing to rezone the property for a commercial parking lot to accommodate parking a food truck or multiple food trucks on the property. The proposed zone is general business, and so if there were ever a permanent structure constructed on the property, that structure would be bound by the setbacks in the general business zone. Food trucks, however, as shown on this plan, are not subject to setback requirements. Regarding transportation infrastructure, we've noted that the property has frontage on both Campbell Lane and Thoroughbred Drive. They are proposing one access point to Thoroughbred Drive, located in the general vicinity right down here. You can see that's the entrance there that they're proposing. And then under water adequacy and wastewater adequacy, we've noted that in the event that the property is developed for a use other than commercial parking, that there is sewer and water available in the area to serve the property. We've also noted under natural features that a large sinkhole encompasses a majority of the property. It's located in this general corner here. It just kind of clips the edge there. So the majority of the property does not contain a sinkhole, but we did note that there was a small portion that did. And then moving on to site design and compatibility, I'll jump back to the land use map here. We've noted that the majority of the area is a mixture of uses. You can see single-family residential and multifamily residential uses in the area. Bowling Green Junior High is located across from the property, and then traveling further out Campbell Lane to the left side of the screen there, you'll see that there are also some commercial uses. Under surrounding architectural features, we've noted that there are a mixture of residential and commercial structures in the area, ranging from 1 story in height to 3 stories in height. Under building materials, the applicants have stated in development plan condition number 4 that any future improvements on the property would be constructed of at least 75% brick, masonry, wood, stone, glass, stucco, or modern construction materials such as fiber cement board or metal panels or split face block. Plain face block shall not be permitted as a visible surface material. Staff has noted that the existing structures in the vicinity are comprised mainly of brick, stone, or modern masonry material. There are also some buildings in the area that utilize vinyl on a portion of the structure, but none that incorporate metal panels. Under building orientation, as I noted earlier, there's not a permanent structure proposed on the property at this time, but staff does suggest that any future permanent structure built on the site should appear to face Campbell Lane and Thoroughbred Drive. The applicant stated in development plan condition number 3 that any structure constructed on the site would be designed to face either Campbell Lane or Thoroughbred Drive, but not both. Under landscaping and screening, we've noted that landscaping and screening would adhere to the regulations set forth in the zoning ordinance. So for this proposed application, the parking area would have landscaping requirements outlined in the ordinance for buffers around the perimeter and also landscaping interior to the site. Under pedestrian, bicycle, or transit facilities, staff has noted that there are existing sidewalks along Campbell Lane. GoBG Transit has 2 transit stops nearby at the intersection of Campbell Lane and Thoroughbred Drive, and on Thoroughbred Drive near the entrance to the Hilltop Club Apartments, which it would just be to the bottom of the screen there if you're looking at the exhibit. And there's also a pedestrian connection that's proposed to the existing sidewalk along Campbell Lane in this general location. Moving on to the development plan conditions, and I actually touched on 3 and 4 during the site design and compatibility review, so I'm not going to reread those. But under number 1, I'll start with that one. It says final site access will have to be coordinated with Bowling Green Department of Public Works. Number 2 outlines uses that would not be permitted on the property, which include bingo parlor, pawn shop, adult entertainment, or the sale of adult-oriented material, tattoo parlor, used vehicle sales, or vehicle repair unless associated with a new car dealership and telecommunications tower. Number 3, the first part we didn't cover previously, so I will go over that. It says that any structure constructed on the site would be limited to a maximum of 4,000 square feet. And then number 5, if any sinkholes are found or open up during construction, they shall be repaired prior to the continuation of construction about the said sinkhole. Staff has noted that the proposed general development plan meets a majority of the review criteria for site design and compatibility, and that compatibility of the proposed development should be determined by the Planning Commission. And if approved, the development would be subject to further review for compliance with zoning ordinance requirements during the site work portion of the review process. Moving on to Focus 2030 category review, staff evaluated 13 items. Staff found that 7 of these items, that the application complied with 7 of those items relating to the future land use map, access to the property, and the existing sinkhole. We also noted that there are 6 items that the Planning Commission should determine compliance with, and I will touch on those here really quickly. So first is LU 113, which relates to compatibility. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is compatible with the area. Next, LU 2, which deals with quality and character of development. The Planning Commission should determine if a commercial parking lot for food trucks is a sustainable, high-quality development and if it will protect the character of the community. Next, LU 252 and HN1, which deal with infill development. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposal is a suitable infill project that is compatible with the area, if it will maintain or improve the existing character, development pattern, and urban design along Campbell Lane, and therefore if it complies with those items regarding infill development. And then lastly, we have ED1 and ED3, which deal with economic development. The Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development is a small business and entrepreneurial endeavor that will diversify the local economy. And then I'm going to jump back to page 1 of the staff report and wrap up with the points to consider. Number 1, the proposal is consistent with the future land use map and commercial category. The proposed development complies with the majority of the site characteristics review criteria. The proposed general development plan complies with a majority of the review criteria for site design, and the Planning Commission should determine if the proposed development is compatible with the surrounding area. And finally, staff has noted that there are other properties located in the area that could accommodate a food truck without rezoning. And I believe that is all I have for the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know that the applicants are also here.
Ma'am, Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Hurt before we hear from the applicant?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so these are food trucks, but if they come back and want to build a building, they have to move the setback off of Campbell Lane?
So in the event that they wanted to construct a building on this property, they would have to adhere to the setback requirements in the general business zone. Mm-hmm.
If I read the item number 4 under the general development plan conditions, it says 75% brick, masonry, stone, wood, etc. So you could pick any of those items under the current reading? You could build at 75% wood?
Yes, according to what they're proposing. Yes, that is correct.
Food trucks are they proposing?
The preliminary plan here shows 3. You may want to clarify that with the applicant. I'm not sure if there would be 3 all the time, or if there may be 1 or 2 or maybe more. I don't know.
Are they anticipating foot traffic mostly?
That may be a good question for them. I'm not sure. I know there are sidewalks on Campbell Lane, and there are some residents that may live nearby, but I know that is also a lot of commercial traffic in the area kind of going to various places along Campbell Lane. So I'm not sure if they're targeting foot traffic or vehicular traffic, so you may want to follow up with them.
Lastly, are there any parking requirements that would apply to food trucks?
Not for a food truck, since it's technically just a vehicle. So that was why the commercial parking lot is really kind of the principal use of the property. And then if there's a food truck, they would just park in the parking lot just like any other car would. And so there's really not a requirement for a food truck. Yeah.
Any other questions before we hear from the applicant?
Rachel, circle back to what Dean asked. The setback applies if a structure is built, but there is absolutely 0 requirements on how far the trucks
Correct.
to be
So
off of Campbell Lane.
So the only requirement that would come into play, so the commercial parking lot itself, we have a landscape buffer requirement between the right-of-way and the pavement, essentially, but that would be less than a building setback that would be required for a standalone structure.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
We'll hear from the applicant. If you'd state your name and address for us, please.
Caitlin Davis, and it's 820 Rockwood Drive, Bowling Green, Kentucky.
And you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Yes, ma'am. Anything that you would like to add? And I believe that some of the commissioners have some questions.
Yeah. First, I just wanted to state that we wanted to come to you last time, but we were waiting for the approval from the Public Works, and we did get that, so that's why we're here in front of you tonight. The idea behind the food truck development is a great opportunity for economic development with Bowling Green. We believe that that is kind of the next wave that's coming. You see a lot of the bigger cities that are very prominent with food trucks, including Nashville. Seaside is a very popular destination for a lot of Bowling Green residents where it's very prominent. But my husband and I lived in Nashville before we moved to Bowling Green 8 years ago. I grew up here, but before we moved back, we lived in Nashville, and food trucks are so huge there. It's such a great opportunity for people, whether on foot or driving, to go and have a variety of options from different vendors, and an opportunity for them to be in one spot versus driving around to different businesses or schools and promoting where they are through social media or anything like that. Having a set location where they are day and night really helps them to build their business and establish something. It's also a great opportunity for those that want to get in the restaurant business. Food trucks are not cheap, but they're cheaper than opening a restaurant. So it's a great opportunity for those that want to get into the restaurant business, an opportunity to do that at a lower scale. It also helps promote local businesses. These would obviously all be local businesses. Nothing of it would be corporate or anything like that. So it's a great opportunity for our local residents to do that. The idea behind the food trucks with the community is just everybody being able to go there and have the different options to choose from and hang out. And what we're proposing gives a good, we actually, to touch on your point of the setback, we are actually proposing 25 feet. So there's a good amount of space between it. But the opportunity for local residents is our main reason behind it. We are wanting to have 3 to 4 food trucks. 4 would be the max that we would have at the location. Another thing with it, I mean, on Food Network, they have a show that's only designated for food trucks. So the enthusiasm for food trucks is really there. So we truly do believe that this is the next wave and a great opportunity for Bowling Green.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions, commissioners?
And so let's circle back to parking if we could. Sure. So you envision the food trucks along the front facing Campbell Lane and parking for vehicles that stop there. Where do you envision that parking to take place?
Parking. Do you have that one? Dad? I don't know how to
The plan seems to indicate some parking, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Yeah, I've got it here. I don't know how to. Well, oh yeah, you can see it right there, but it doesn't always show up on the.
Yeah, this looks different. Yeah, it's just not showing.
Yeah, it's just not really showing up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's not, mine doesn't show up.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So how many parking spots are there?
There are a total of 13.
And are you anticipating a lot of foot traffic?
There will be foot traffic because of all of the apartment living over there, as well as the housing over there. I think that we'll get a lot of people, the local businesses that might walk down, since there are sidewalks of that, but there will also be driving as well. Yeah, a combination of the two.
I just really have a concern about safety.
Okay.
My daughter used to live in those college suites, which are now
Yeah.
Hilltop, and in one 6-month period, there were over 500 calls to those apartments. There have been people shot, there's been people, a lot of things, and I'm just concerned about, are you going to do light up and have
Absolutely.
security on
Yes.
these?
Yes.
So you're going to light up Campbell Lane?
There will be lights above the trucks. The operating hours will be till about 8 or 9, no later than 9 o'clock, and there will be large lights that will light up the entire area.
Okay, but are you going to have security there after dark, or what kind
There's
of
going to
security?
be cameras. We would have cameras on those light poles, but that would be the security.
Will the trucks be going home at night?
They will not. They will be staying there.
All 3 or however
Correct.
many?
Yes,
Will
ma'am.
these trucks go out to venues when there's something going on at the ballpark, will they be leaving and going and
We
coming
do have the
back?
opportunity to do that if they are going out for a particular event. But would be set hours of when they're coming back in, so they're not driving back in the middle of a lunch rush or anything like that. But they would be able to go out for special events if they have that booked.
And are you going to prevent the junior high students from coming over there? Because that's going to be a major safety issue for those junior high kids to try to cross over Campbell Lane and
Andy,
try to get to
they
these
can't leave
trucks.
school.
I'm sorry?
They can't leave school, Sandy.
They can't leave school.
There are
That's what he's
several
saying.
children that walk from the junior high to their home. There are several that walk in my neighborhood that's off of Homestead. So there are kids that are on foot traffic that she's addressing that, I think, because you're right. During school hours, the kids are locked down. They're not allowed to cross the street. After hours and during athletic events, though, there's no teachers or counselors out there to control foot traffic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we would be able to regulate them coming over if it's after school hours, but I would have the same, and I understand your concern, but I would have the same concern for any other business over there that they're walking to. That's just,
Did you happen to check with the junior high, the principal, anybody with the Bowling Green City School System? Or
if they're approving it,
if they're in opposition or if they would approve of it?
no, I have not spoken with them.
I did make that.
Okay.
I think it's irresponsible to put it across from junior high.
You think it's irresponsible to put food trucks across from it?
It is.
Okay,
I think it's irresponsible to put what you're proposing across from junior high.
okay.
You've got lots and lots of lots, particularly down where the other commercial stuff is on Campbell, that you could, I don't know why you wouldn't put a food truck where there are more business, where there are more foot traffic, other than just residential and school kids. I'm from Dallas, and I just spent 2 weeks in Austin. Some of the best food I ate while I was in Austin is from food trucks. They're not across from schools. They're not in residential areas. They're near construction areas, they're near commercial areas, they're near business areas. And they're frequented during the day, like what you said. They're not in an area like this. You're right, they're probably the next thing that's coming. And I applaud you for what you want to do as far as a food truck. I think you picked the wrong spot.
With all due respect, there's not a lot of commercial spots that are walkable in Bowling Green. So, I mean, the idea of something else coming in there, there's always going to be a safety factor of anywhere.
Another question? Yep.
Clearly, your intent here is food trucks, but I'd like to go back to the restrictions that you're proposing in the event that a structure would be built there.
Okay.
They appear to be pretty broad. Are you open to possibly changing those? For example, it says under the current reading, 75% of the structure could just be wood. For wood, would you be open to substituting something like LP smart siding? Okay. And would you be open to remove the metal panels?
Removing the metal panels? Yeah. And we have no intention of doing a full structure anytime.
We're just, we're looking at this.
Yeah.
Once we zone it.
Sure.
If it gets
Can't change
sold,
it. Yeah.
then we just want to have a compatible property
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah.
That exchange that just happened, we amended in binding element number 4, we deleted wood and put in its place LP smart siding. Did I hear that correct?
Yes, perhaps we could say engineered wood or LP smart siding, so we could convey the intent. I'm just trying to prevent just a wood exterior structure there.
And you also agree to delete metal panels.
Yes. You're welcome.
Anything else?
I have a question. So if there's no food trucks there, it would be an empty parking lot. essentially, right?
Right now?
Right now.
Correct.
So there's no structure whatsoever for people to be covered if there's any kind of inclement weather or?
No, generally what they do with food trucks is you'll have like the, the umbrella coming out of that. And then it would be up to the area, the food trucks there that are putting like the umbrellas up for, but generally, yeah, with food trucks, it's not really a destination for bad weather or anything like that. A lot of them will do takeout orders and things like that, so it's like kind of like curbside, where you can call and place your order and they can bring it out to your car, things like that. But there will be no shelter there for bad weather.
With food trucks, you say there's going to be?
Yes. Max of 4, but really we're looking at 3.
Are these like rotating? Is that what the plan is for, like a rotating different thing? Or are these like people that are going to be there permanently?
People that are going to be there permanently. I mean, we would have a lease agreement with them for a certain amount of time. So there's certainly, it can change at some point, but it wouldn't be rotating daily between a bunch of different businesses. You're welcome.
Any other questions?
The only, I've heard, we've talked about parking. The only parking that's going to be there is just the people that come to the food trucks. Is that the
Yes,
way
sir.
that you talked? It kind of implied that you were going to have a place where people could park their vehicles there and leave them for an extended period of time, and that's what I was concerned about.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. No, that's just the intention to go, the people that are driving there to eat.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions before we open it up to the audience? Commissioners? Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience concerning the food trucks, this application? Do we have any opposition to this request? A show of hands. Okay, we have opposition. Would you like to make a statement, ma'am? Yes. If you would come forward then, since we have no questions, we'll let you give your statement. You would state your name and address for us, please, and we'll swear you in and then let you make your statement.
My name is Ann Loudermilk. I own and live at 2516 Thoroughbred Drive.
Swear to tell the truth.
Yes, I do.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, I also own the house next door to me, 2448 Thoroughbred Drive, and my mother lives there. I bought the house my first house back in 1998, and I was here back when we were rezoning for the apartments in Mohawk. So some of this may sound familiar. First of all, I love food trucks, and I watch the Food Network. So I'm all about the concept, but I'm not about the concept in this area. I'll first speak to security. When I was here before, I ran the police records from 2009 to July 2017. And sadly, I haven't had a chance to get these updated. But in that time period, there were over 7,200 police calls to either Regency apartments or to College Suites, with 4,599 of those being to the old College Suites. Just last week, someone in our neighborhood heard 6 shots fired from College Suites, and there were 3 police cars dispatched over there. It is an ongoing problem with security in that corner of our world. And I speak for, I think, a large part of the community that really is very leery of any new environment that's going to add to that. As I said, I'm not opposed to the food trucks in theory, but a parking lot at night on the corner with 2 apartment complexes on either side, I think lends to higher security risk. And I'm not so sure that it adds any value to our property. There are very few places in Bowling Green that has affordable homes for middle-income people. I'm one of those, and I really want my property not to be in the pooper when I die and my daughter gets it. Sorry. And so I'm worried about property values, I'm worried about safety, and I'm really worried about and this, I'm speaking for the community, increased traffic. There will be more, I think, car traffic going in and out of there than foot traffic, just by nature of the community, because we have the school and there's not that many businesses that close by. That corner of Thoroughbred is already taking on extra traffic because of the building, I don't know how many years ago, and shutting off part of Shawnee. And then it's going to have more increased traffic because of the apartments that's going to be built on Mohawk. So I would just respectfully ask that we consider the impact of that small residential area as far as property values, increased traffic, and safety. And I submit that on behalf of our community.
If questions, just, yes, ma'am.
Yes, please. So I want to see if I can understand as clearly as possible your concerns. So if, is your objection that it's a food truck? So for example, if this were a restaurant, would you have the same objection?
I would have the same concerns with the restaurant. What I would not have a concern with is another Morningside, where there's limited traffic going in and out. And the community feels that way as well. So it's just the amount of traffic that's coming in and/or the aesthetics and the safety.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Commissioners, do you have anything else that you'd like to say or ask before I ask for a motion? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I forgot to mention before I went through the staff report that I think Jessica had a handout at your seats.
Yes,
And
we
we
had-
did receive one email from a neighbor just regarding this application. I wanted to make sure that everybody noticed that at your seat this evening.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Anything else? Any comments? Nothing else? Then I will ask for a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and conditioned upon the general development plan docket number 2018-57 ZBG. Based upon the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing, the proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan. Is demonstrated by its compliance with the objectives and actions presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request this motion includes a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you. We need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rich,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Coppinger. No, ma'am. Commissioner Clark,
No.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Madison, Commissioner Houston,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am. Motion carried with opposition. Our recommendation will be for approval. Thank you all. Our next item, docket number 2019-01DP, Bishop Land Sales LLC, has filed an application to amend the general development plan, the development plan conditions, on a tract of land containing approximately 1.12 acres located at 275 Collett Road. This property is zoned RS1D, which is single-family residential with a general development plan. We'll have the staff report from Ms. Ramsey.
Thank you, Chair Runner. We had a pre-application conference on December 3rd for the property you see outlined here in yellow. The applicants this evening are requesting to amend their general development plan in order to allow 4 individual driveways for each home instead of 2 shared driveways along Collett Road. I'm going to kind of jump ahead to the development history. If this property looks familiar, it's because it came before you in 2017 to be rezoned from residential estate to RS1D to allow 4 single-family homes there. At that time, it was going to be 2 total driveways shared among the 4, and they're requesting 4 individual this evening. The future land use, I'll jump to that, is low-density residential. And just to note, the Planning Commission should determine if these proposed changes, about namely the driveways, are remain consistent with the low-density residential designation. The RS1D zone is not listed as a potentially compatible district in the low-density residential flume designation. However, the density remains within the potentially compatible range for this designation, and no additional lots are proposed with the application this evening. So this body should determine if that change is appropriate for the development and will remain compatible with the area. Going to go on to page 2. I'll go ahead and pull up the proposal there. Page 2, you see there the future land use map. There's the definition there of the low-density residential category. The densities range from 0 to 4.5 dwelling units per acre for this category. And with this, with these 4 lots, as they were approved in 2017, the density is 3.57 dwelling units per acre. You'll notice below there the site characteristics review and the site design and compatibility review that they're not really as long as they usually are for applications that we see, but that's because we've included items here that are applicable to the change proposed. So that's why you see the transportation there, the access mentioned. Those are the what apply to this particular proposed change. So the one thing I'll point out on the site design and compatibility review, the access, the majority of the existing individual lots on Collett Road have direct access to Collett Road and are served by separate driveways, and then lots in larger subdivisions in the area are served by internal streets. This property is part of the Plano Focal Point Plan, but there are no applicable policies from the plan relating to this proposed change. So that's why we don't have anything, any items from the plan there. On to page 3, I'll go ahead and point out the proposed changes. Number 1, proposed to stay the same as number of lots to be 4. Number 2, as you see there, it formally said the maximum number of access points to Collett Road shall be 2. They have proposed to change that to the location and number of driveways accessing Collett Road shall be coordinated with and approved by Warren County Public Works prior to the issuance of a building permit. A couple other things you'll see marked there. The development plan condition number 5, that's just a housekeeping item. They spelled out 1,500 square feet, as we often see. And then number 7 there, the what's crossed out, that was just reworded and moved to number 2, which I just read. So down below there, the zoning ordinance requirements, you'll see in bold at the bottom, an amendment to any development plan condition for an approved development plan shall be approved only if the proposed amendment remains consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan and upon a finding that, on to page 4, that A, there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area of the property in question, which were not anticipated at the time of the adoption of the general development plan or development plan conditions, which are being amended, or there have developed physical conditions which would not permit development of property in question in accordance with the general development plan or development plan conditions which are being amended. So below that, the applicant submitted a narrative. I'll go ahead and read that. They said the proposed general development plan's conditions are needed by the applicant because the original binding elements requiring shared driveways were prepared based on a misunderstanding of the owner about what was required of him. Warren County Public Works has advised the owner that shared driveways will not necessarily be required, but Public Works was not consulted in connection with the rezoning in 2017. So below that, Focus 2030 category review. Similarly to page 2, you'll see that only a few items are listed there, that they are the only ones that apply to this proposed change. And so first there, the proposed change of the number of access points to Collett Road does not impact flume compliance and therefore complies with LU 111 and LU 112. This body should determine if the additional access points to Collett Road are compatible with the surrounding area and if the proposal complies with LU 113. And finally, the proposal complies with LU 231. The amendment to change the number of driveways, they address that by saying that it would be coordinated with and approved by Warren County Public Works. So that is all I have on that. Again, the only thing was to point out was this zone's not listed in the low density residential flume designation, but the density is. So anyway, this proposed change is up to you all to determine if it's still compatible as you all determined it to be in 2017.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Ramsey before we hear from the applicant?
So would it be accurate to say that the only change here is whether there is a shared driveway or not? Am I reading that correctly?
Correct, the number of driveways that would be allowed on for the development of the 4 lots.
In the previous zoning, was the shared driveway approved?
Yes, what you have before you tonight is what was approved in, the stuff that's crossed out is what was, everything that was approved in 2017. And at that time, the development plan condition made provisions for 2 driveways to be shared among 2 lots, 2 lots per driveway.
My recollection may be flawed, but I thought there was, I thought there was a restriction on shared driveways. Am I not recalling that correctly? So it is permitted. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Permitted and sometimes required, but not in this case. Public Works was consulted this time around, and
And lastly, they have agreed to consult with someone regarding site distance here for when the driveways are placed.
Public Works would be
Works.
their go-to on that to determine where they would go and how they could put them on the property.
Any other questions before we hear from the applicant? No other questions? Thank you, ma'am, and we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Ms. Runner. My name's Kevin Brooks. I represent the applicant. We don't really have anything to add. I think it is as simple as you have seen it. I will say I will correct the staff just a little bit. We're just asking to be able to work with Public Works on how many. We have no assurance that we'll get 4. We feel like we'll get 3 for sure, and we hope we'll get 4, but there's utilities to move and stuff, so the engineers will have to work that out, and site distance will be considered at that point. So that's what we're asking for.
Having a quick question. It shows a number of structures on the property now. Is it your plan that some of those will be demolished?
I think they're gone.
They are gone?
They are gone.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
The downside, or from your side of it, Mr. Brooks, of putting just 2 accesses there?
Well, I'm not an expert in property value, but I think, an individual property, there are issues with shared driveways. They cause a little confrontations once in a while. So if everybody can have their own, that's what they're going to want.
Did Public Works feel like there was any kind of safety issue out there, adding 4 driveways instead of 2, or did they even look at this before?
No, they have not committed to 4. And yes, site distance, we've talked to them, and they won't go back out. I mean, they didn't just say, sure, you can have them. So yeah, that's something that they're going to look at. I mean, I talked to Mr. Moore, Public Works, Josh Moore. He hadn't been there in months and hadn't gone out. I just talked to him, and he said by recollection he was pretty sure 3 would work, but he needed to go out and look at it before he would approve 4, and that's kind of the way we left it.
Mr. Brooks, just to clarify, if you meet with Josh Moore and he says you can only have 3, then you're down to 3 lots at that point, correct?
Oh, we could do a shared driveway.
Okay, so
but
you
that's
go
the
back to-
decision we'll have to make.
I see.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. At least I think we could. Hope staff agrees with that. Yeah, okay. All right.
Sir?
So you're asking us to approve something that you don't know what you're gonna have? Am I right or wrong?
Well, it's right. Can I clarify that a little bit, Mr. Rich? I think this is consistent with a whole lot that we do these days in the zoning process, and that is we leave the traffic engineering issues to the traffic engineers rather than to the staff. That's all we're asking.
I understand that. Maybe you should have done that before you come down.
You are absolutely right about that. Yes, sir. You're right about that.
So there may not be a need for this change in the development plan, correct? If they only allow 2, then we're doing this for nothing. Is that correct?
Yes, but it didn't make sense to us to go. In fact, Mr. Moore was very specific. He said, you get your binding element changed, and then we'll talk. There's no point in him approving driveways that our development plan conditions won't allow us to have. So I think everyone was agreed the thing to do is to amend the development plan conditions and then work with the engineers to see how many we get.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone in the audience? Do we have any opposition? No opposition, no questions? Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Anything, commissioners? I'll ask for a motion, please.
Can I clarify one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
On the property address, it says 225 Collett Road, but on different things, it says 275. What is the correct address for this property?
It is 275. That was a typo in the brief summary of request.
And on the pre-application, it should be 275. Okay, thanks.
Verified it after the submittal.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll ask for a motion, please.
Make the motion to approve the proposed general development amendment docket number 2019-01 DP based upon the testimony and documents presented in the public hearing. The proposed general development plan amendment is consistent with adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with objectives and actions items presented in the staff report. Further, I also find that there has been major changes in economic, physical, and social nature within the area of the property in question, and I request that the findings of fact and recommendation include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Thank you. We need a second.
Second.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark?
No.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren?
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Houston?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Vitale? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot she left. Commissioner Coppinger? Yes, ma'am. Chair Runner?
Yes, ma'am. Motion carried with opposition. Thank you. The last items tonight. Docket number 2019-01 Flume. Golden Flower LLC and Christian Life Center have filed an application for a future land use map amendment containing approximately 9.9035 acres located on a tract of land at 3 Springs Road, bounded by Sutherland Drive, Silver Springs Avenue, and I-65, from mixed-use residential to mixed-use commercial. And also concerning that same property, docket number 2019-03 ZBG, those applicants have also requested a zone change for that same property from agriculture to light industrial. So we'll have the staff report from Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Chair Runner and Commissioners. We had a pre-application date for this property you see before you on June 1st, 2018. You see, as you described, it's bound by 3 Springs Road and I-65. As for landmarks, you see adjacent to it, you see Flea Land there, which is got it titled on the roof for you. And then 3 Springs Storage, and then, well, I just jumped a bunch of slides there. And then you see the property that we are meeting tonight about, and then Golden Flower also owns the properties just below that as well. Then you see a couple of residences and a church, so that orients you there for this property. As you mentioned, they're first asking for the first part an amendment to the future land use map to go from mixed-use residential to mixed-use commercial, and then if that future land use map amendment is successful, then they would like to rezone the property from agriculture to light industrial in order to display trailers, in addition to selling the trailers and equipment on the property. This is kind of, I believe, an expansion of Trailer World, if you're familiar with that business. Moving along through our maps, you'll see our existing zoning map. The current zoning of this property is agriculture, and agriculture has been the zoning of this property for as long as our records show. You see other zoning surrounding highway business, some light industrial across the interstate, agriculture, and some single family in the area as well. Looking at the existing land use, it's pretty much follows the zoning map. You see agriculture, you see the light industrial with the storage buildings, see some surrounding highway business, agriculture, as well as some single-family residential as well. Looking on now at the future land use map, You see that it is currently designated mixed-use residential, and they're again asking to go to mixed-use commercial. So I'm going to skip on over to page 2 now and start looking at the future land use map analysis that staff conducted, which is the first part of this request. Currently, the mixed-use residential category, which is what the current designation is, applies to mixed-use areas where taken as a whole, the primary land use is residential in a variety of housing types and densities balanced by complementary retail, office, institutional, and civic uses. This designation applies to the historic core of downtown Bowling Green or urbanized areas being redeveloped with the primary use as residential where complementary commercial services are provided in a contiguous area. Standalone commercial development should not exceed 10% of any contiguous area designated mixed-use residential. So that is the description of the current future land use map category. What the applicant is asking for tonight is mixed-use commercial. So that category applies to strategic areas, mostly undeveloped today, that are located near designated industrial parks and accessible from major transportation corridors. These areas are envisioned as predominantly large-scale employment and business centers, albeit supplemented by compatible light industrial, retail, services, hotels, and where appropriate, higher density residential development or standalone and mixed-use developments. Primary activities in these areas may include low and medium high-rise office complexes, as well as environmentally friendly manufacturing and business centers. The primary focus of this category is commercial mixed uses with complementary residential comprising of up to 50% of the contiguous area. And then compatibility is assessed by applying policies found in LU 113 in conjunction with the General Development Plan, which we will get to in just a minute. So LU 114, whenever we have a future land use map or amendment request, LU 114 outlines a procedure for amending the flume, and then the Planning Commission's approval of a flume amendment should be based on one of the following criteria that you see listed there. We'll focus just on that third bullet, that the proposed use is clearly compatible with the existing surrounding development as demonstrated by the applicant. This review should include a compatibility assessment of the proposed use, which includes but is not limited to location and bulk of the building and other structures, building height, building materials, intensity of use, density of the development, location of parking and signage within the surrounding area. In addition, the applicant must prove that the proposed amendment will not result in development that exceeds the capacity of existing infrastructure. So in order to address that bullet, the applicants provided the following narrative in their application. The applicant believes the proposed use is clearly compatible with the existing surrounding developments. The applicant owns the next 3 agricultural tracts directly to the southwest of the proposed development. To the northeast is Three Springs Self-Storage and Flea Land, which are both zoned highway business, and the remainder of the properties to the northeast are mostly highway business or light industrial. The existing infrastructure in the area is more than capable to service this development. I'm going to switch back to the first page and just read our first point to consider. This is just concerning the future land use map amendment request. So at the time the future land use map was adopted in 2012, the intended pattern of development was to change over time or develop into a mixed-use residential character. The Planning Commission should determine if this future land use map amendment is compatible with the intent of the plan or if the change in character to a more intense mixed-use commercial is appropriate. So that kind of concludes the future land use map analysis. But as we stated and read in cooperation with LU 113 and LU 114, it'd be the preliminary development plan and the site evaluation. So this kind of moves into the zoning, the rezoning request to go from agriculture to light industrial. I'll go ahead and advance the slides here. That's the future land use map amendment request showing the boundary. Same thing from the zone change request going from agriculture to light industrial, and then I'll leave it here on the preliminary development plan as we go through the rest of the staff report. So we conducted a site characteristics review. I'll just touch on two things here. The natural features, those of you familiar with this property know there's a big pond in the front of the property, so we noted that. As in regards to prime farmland, this property does contain soil types that are designated as prime farmland. The site design and compatibility review, a couple things I'll note there. Surrounding land uses, which we kind of mentioned earlier, but it's comprised of a number of things: agriculture, single family, residential, commercial, industrial, and even public institutional uses. And of course, there's some basic vacant tracts in the vicinity as well. With surrounding architectural features, mixture of 1- and 2-story residential, commercial, and industrial structures. And the applicants have limited the building height to a maximum of 30 feet for any new structures constructed on the property. Regarding building materials, structures in the area are comprised of a mixture of brick, modern masonry materials, vinyl, and metal. So we kind of have a mixture of all kinds of uses and types and building materials there. The applicants have stated in their development plan conditions that any new structures will have front facades constructed of 80% brick or other modern masonry material, and that no plain face block will be allowed as an exterior surface. Regarding building orientation, the applicants have stated in their development plan conditions that any new structures on the property will face Three Springs Road. Landscaping and screening, applicants have committed in their to maintain the existing vegetation around the perimeter of the property, and then also provide the additional landscaping that is required by the zoning ordinance. Moving on to page 4, I just want to mention open space as well. While there is no exact commitment to providing increased open space here, you do see the large, as you look at the preliminary development plan, the large pond and drainage easement that is currently across the property, and the preliminary development plan does show maintaining that drainage area and that pond as much as possible, with the exception of where the new entrance would be, or the expanded entrance would be required. General development plan conditions that were supplied by the applicant to help address compatibility. I'll just read through those quickly. Number 1, hours of operation, Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. They'll be closed on Sundays. Number 2 deals with the existing access. The existing access will be utilized but be upgraded to the minimum requirements for a commercial industrial entrance as outlined in the zoning ordinance, and then of course coordinated with Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. The proposed drive lane where it crosses the existing drainage area will be designed and engineered to be above the high water elevation for a 100-year storm, so it'll maintain that drainage area there. Number 4, existing vegetation on the perimeter of the property will remain, and additional landscaping will be provided along the vehicle use areas in accordance with the Warren County zoning ordinance. Number 5, all utility improvements will be located underground. Number 6, outside lighting and parking areas will be directed downward and appropriately shielded to limit light trespass onto adjoining residential properties. Number 7, no more than 1 monument-style sign will be allowed per building lot of record. And then we have an option built in here, whether it'll be at the front of the property on Three Springs Road or at the back along I-65. So if it's A is a monument style located near Three Springs Road, it will be up to 10 feet in height, no larger than 75 feet per sign face, 75 square feet per sign face. If it's located at the rear of the property, it'll be a monument style sign, not to exceed 30 feet in height and no larger than 100 square feet in sign face, per sign face. Number 8, any new structures on site will not exceed a height of 30 feet. Number 9, any new structures on site will have front facades constructed of 80% brick or other modern masonry materials and will face Three Springs Road. Number 10, no plain face block will be allowed as an exterior surface. And number 11 is our typical prohibited uses we see, I think including above ground storage tanks is a little extra there. So moving on to page 5 and is looking at the Focus 2030 category review. We just have identified those 12 applicable goals, objectives, and action items for your consideration with regards to the compatibility of the development of the proposal in this area. We've went over kind of most of those, and then you note the ones that the Planning Commission should determine the compatibility. So with that, I'll conclude by returning to the first page and going over the last points to consider. If the future land use map amendment is approved, the proposal would be consistent with the future land use map and mixed-use commercial category. The proposed development complies with the majority of the site characteristics review criteria, and then the proposed general development plan complies with the majority of the review criteria for site design and compatibility and does meet the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. Be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here if you have any questions for them.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Peterson?
Very quickly, it does show vegetation on the site plan along the perimeter. Is there a height requirement for that, or is it just shrubbery? Or
There's a minimum plant calipers and heights in the zoning ordinance. I can't recall those off the top of my head, but they would have to meet those.
Clearly, there's already some vegetation on site. I assume that they're going to try to preserve that if possible, if it doesn't interfere with the driveway.
They've committed to preserving that, and then oftentimes, if we're able to credit existing vegetation, then we just have them fill in if any's missing, if it's a screening or buffering issue. But yes, they've committed to doing both, keeping the perimeter vegetation and supplementing as the zoning ordinance requires.
Other questions for Mr. Peterson before we hear from the applicant? Thank you, sir. Mr. Feldman, do you have anything you'd like to add? We'll swear you in first, okay? Your name and address.
Richard Feldman, and I swear to tell the truth and so forth.
Thank you, sir.
The basis to this is that we simply need more space. Been there a long time, and we've used up about every square inch we can use, you know. And so that's the whole basis to it. And to be quite frank with you, adding more to this is we don't plan on developing this whole thing at one time. I believe in being very conservative, especially the way the economic environment is right now. So basically, it will comply with whatever requirements are as far as paving and lighting and so forth. But you see, it basically looks like a flag there, and we'll start towards the rear and work our way forward with that. You know, it's like anything else, and it entails a lot of money to get that done. And we're not going to commit to doing the whole thing at one time. I want to go slowly, proceed slowly, and cautiously, let's say. You know, I believe in that with all my heart. Slowly and try to be sure-footed.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Feldman?
So the plan indicates a structure closer to Three Springs Road, and trailers displayed behind that structure.
Correct.
Is that your intent?
The intention, like I said, I'll start at the rear and go forward. We have to comply with all these. From an engineering point of view, we've got to put that in there in such a way that we don't have a problem with it in the future as far as, even though it's light traffic and it doesn't really move very much back there. But as time goes by, whatever the requirements is, whatever we have to do, we're going to do. I don't like to, I'm not going to fight City Hall. I'm just not into that. Been doing this too long, you know.
You had a follow-up question?
Let me ask the question a little more specifically, if I may. Is it your intent to display trailers all the way up to the front of this property as it's shown paved? Or is it your intent to, at some point, have a building in the front with the trailers in the back?
At this point in time, I do not intend on pushing anything close to Three Springs Road whatsoever. I simply need storage, and I need an area back in the back to store these trailers. As I think everybody's aware now, you know, a lot of our business and everybody's business comes from the internet. So to make a long story short, if it wasn't the fact that Trailer World was in such a proximity, a close proximity to this property, I'd set this thing out in the middle of Butler County or somewhere because of the high taxes on this land. And so that being said, right now we don't intend to do anything whatsoever with the front of that property. And that probably won't happen in the very near future either.
And as you develop this property, Mr. Peterson, you can address this for me. If he has an intent to do this slowly over some period of time, at what point will the landscape buffer be enforced?
It will be enforced as, if the asphalt is placed incrementally, it'll have to go with that. So it'll come along with that.
Oh, I'll address that to you. You know, that part about Bucking City Hall and the County Hall and so on and so forth. We want to go in there right away and do whatever is required as far as the landscape and all of that. I want to get that behind me and expense it off, you know.
One last request, if I may. I certainly understand being fiscally responsible, and the fact that you're not going to put the building in the front, the building serves as a bit of a buffer for the trailers being displayed. Would you commit to temporary landscaping along the front perimeter of the property? It'd just be that short section right there.
But adjacent to?
No, right there where the building is currently shown on your plan.
Oh, yeah, I don't.
Yeah. So if you, I want to make sure I understand correctly. You would agree to, you could take that landscaping out, of course, once you build the building, but you would agree to temporary landscaping there, just as you have around the perimeter, and then you could take it out when you build the building?
I don't mind doing that, but if the grade of that property is such that it would take, the grade of that property, when you're driving down Three Springs Road, you're going to see way above whatever I could put in there, though. You know, because if you're looking at that, I'm going to guess that thing rises, and I'm not for sure what 30. Would you think 30 feet? I'm just guessing. I used to do this for a living years ago, but I made a bad choice. I was somewhat of an engineer at one time, and I should have retired. But anyhow, it's about 30 feet, I'm guessing. I'm only guessing. I used to lay out bridges and stuff. So, but what I'm saying is, if I laid some ground cover across that, and you're driving down Three Springs Road, you're going to see the trailers back in the back. Now, those trailers back in the back, they're not going to be. It's not going to be a bunch of junk back there. Property's too darn expensive for that. So it's basically going to be stuff that. And if you've ever been by there, we do some volume of business, but it's not a great deal of volume compared to. Well, we probably do more in some car businesses, but nonetheless, it's not going to be moving a lot of traffic in and out there. The existing road there, of course, is a 2-lane, and to be quite frank with you, whenever we meet and greet a customer up the street at Trailer World, we will drive him down there, you know. So I anticipate us not using that property over 2 or 3 times a day, if that much, and that's basically for viewing, because they will view this product, whatever it is, and you know, like today we sold trailers in about 3 or 4 states, and a lot of times we don't even see the customer or see the product, we broker it. Now that being said, they'll have that product bought and a payment on it, and we'll have that trailer moved off of this property back up to Trailer World, because when they get there they want to leave and drive another 16 hours or wherever to go back home.
So it won't really have a lot of, it won't have a lot of traffic on that at all.
Appreciate your candor and honesty there. So I remove my request for landscaping along the front edge because it really isn't going to be effective.
It won't be effective. If it would, I would do whatever is necessary.
Any other questions? Do we have any opposition to this request? Do we have any questions from anyone in the audience? No questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
We have two actions. First will be the flume change request, and should that pass, we'll act on the zone change request. So I will ask for that motion for the flume change
Make the motion to
request.
approve the proposed future land use map amendment docket number 2019-01 Flume, based upon the testimony and documents presented as public hearing. The proposed Flume amendment has met the directive to amend the Flume as outlined in LU 114 in the comprehensive plan. Further request, this motion includes summary of evidence and testimony presented in the witness's public hearing.
Thank you, sir. We need a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rich,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Coppinger,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Gay,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Madison,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Houston,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried, and now we need to act on the zone change request.
Make the motion to approve the proposed zoning map amendment together with and conditioned upon a general development plan, docket number 2019-3 ZBG, based upon testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. The proposed zoning map amendment is consistent with the adopted Focus 2030 comprehensive plan as demonstrated by its compliance with objectives and actions presented in the staff report. Therefore, the proposed zoning map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Further, I request that this motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witnesses at this public hearing.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you.
Commissioner Houston,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Warren,
Ma'am.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Coppinger, Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Rich,
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Runner.
Yes, ma'am. The motion carried. Our recommendation will be for approval. Thank you all. New business, Mr. Peterson. Anything for us? Commissioners, do you have anything else? Nothing else? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.